Let's be honest, people want to feel safe when they see who's in charge. And a woman in that spot doesn't exactly inspire confidence, does it? That's what Dave said, his words slicing through the room. They hit me with the force of unexpected turbulence, a gut punch I should have seen coming after all these years. He leaned back in his chair like he'd just delivered some profound revelation, arms crossed and mouth twisted into a half-smirk. Around the table, a couple of the guys traded glances, one or two grinning, a few just looking away, bored or maybe a little uncomfortable. My chest burned, but I pressed my hands into my lap until my knuckles whitened. I wasn't about to give Dave the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. I'd learned long ago that showing any weakness was like throwing blood in the water. My name's Chloe Rivers. I've been a pilot for 25 years. I'm 43, divorced, and if you ask my friends, they'll tell you my heart belongs to the sky. Flying has always been my escape hatch, the place where gravity and expectations lost their hold on me. Sometimes I think I was born with jet fuel in my veins. But here's the thing. In aviation, being a woman is like flying with headwinds every single day. No matter how many flight hours you log or how spotless your record is, some people, like Dave, see you as an exception, a risk, a fluke that they're just waiting to expose. You get used to their doubts, but you never get immune. That day, the promotion I'd poured my soul into, chief pilot, the job I'd built my whole career toward, was handed to a guy who still needed a checklist to land in clear weather. I watched the announcement, the handshake, the thin applause. My heart twisted, and for a moment, I wondered what all the years of sacrifice had been for. That was the day I realized something had to give, and maybe the thing that needed to change was me. The first time I ever sat in a cockpit, I was 9. My dad was a mechanic at the tiny airfield just outside our town. Just a handful of hangars and a single cracked runway. He brought me along one lazy Saturday afternoon. "Chloe, you've got to see this," he said, opening the door to a Cessna so clean it glowed in the sunlight. I climbed into the pilot's seat, legs dangling, hands trembling with excitement and a pinch of fear. I traced my fingers over the yoke and the dials, half in awe, half convinced that I belonged there. "You think you could fly one of these someday?" my dad asked, leaning against the doorframe, oil stains on his jeans and pride in his eyes. "Are you kidding? I could fly it right now," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He laughed, ruffled my hair, and I felt a warmth in my chest. "Big dreams, Chloe. Don't let anyone tell you they're too big." That stuck with me, especially when my mom tried to nudge me toward something more practical. She worried that I'd get hurt or worse, disappointed. "Just remember, flying isn't everything," she'd say, pouring coffee at the kitchen counter, her voice gentle but insistent. But I was stubborn. By 16, I'd worked every odd job I could find. Babysitting, waiting tables, sweeping hangars, saving every penny for flying lessons. When I finally told my dad my plan, he set down his mug and looked me dead in the eye. "So you're really doing this?" he asked, voice low and serious. "Absolutely," I said, my hands shaking. "It's not going to be easy," he warned. "They'll make you work twice as hard because you're a girl. You ready for that?" "I'm ready." No hesitation. That half smile he gave me, that was all the encouragement I'd ever need. My mom worried, but she didn't stop me. Maybe she saw something in me that she couldn't put into words, or maybe she just knew I wasn't going to back down. "Just keep your feet on the ground," she'd say, but I think she knew I never would. Years rolled by. I joined the Air Force straight out of high school, hungry for challenge, desperate to prove myself. In those early days, I scrubbed the floors, hauled gear, did whatever it took to earn my place. My commanding officer handed me the toughest assignments, always with the same line: "Let's see if you really belong here, Rivers." I did more than survive. Thrive. I flew missions that made the others sweat, handled emergencies with calm precision. But when it came time for promotions, the recognition always went elsewhere. I watched younger, less experienced men leapfrog over me, their confidence unburdened by doubt. When I switched to commercial aviation, I thought maybe things would be different. I traded my uniform for a pressed blazer and a set of gold wings. But the whispers followed me. Passengers who glanced at me with surprise, crew who second-guessed my decisions, managers who praised my work but never quite trusted me with more. The comments got quieter, but they cut just as deep. Little reminders that I wasn't the image people pictured when they thought, pilot. I tried to ignore them, to focus on the hum of the engines, the feel of the controls in my hands. For a while that was enough. All the while my dad was my biggest cheerleader. After every milestone, every new certification, he called me. "Another glass ceiling smashed, Chloe," he'd say, his voice thick with pride. But when I told him I'd been passed over for chief pilot, something in him shifted. "That's not right, Chloe. You've given them everything. What are they giving you back?" "Nothing, Dad," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. "They're giving me nothing." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "Then maybe it's time to stop playing by their rules." That line rattled around in my head for weeks. I'd spent years believing that if I just worked hard enough, played by the book, I'd win their respect. But what if the game was rigged from the start? That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my flight logbook. Over 20,000 hours in the air. Each entry a story of challenge, triumph, or survival. I remembered the time I landed safely through a thunderstorm with an engine out. The time a passenger had a heart attack and I coordinated the rescue, the countless red-eye flights, the lonely hotel rooms, the birthdays missed, and the sacrifices made. What did I have to show for it all? A glass ceiling that wouldn't budge. A career defined by what I wasn't, rather than what I'd done. Called my dad. He answered on the second ring, his voice steady as always. "Hey Chloe, what's up?" I hesitated, but I felt the tears threatening and I didn't want to hide anymore. "I'm done, Dad," I said, my voice trembling. "I'm quitting. I can't keep fighting a losing battle. I've given them everything, and they just keep pushing me aside." He was quiet for a long moment. I heard the clock ticking in the background. Then softly he said, "Maybe it's about time." I let his words settle over me. For so long I'd believed leaving meant giving up, letting them win. But maybe it was about reclaiming my dignity, my life. Maybe it was about refusing to let their narrow minds define my worth. For the first time I allowed myself to imagine a future where I set the rules. Where I didn't have to fight for a seat at their table. I built my own. I sat by the window, watching a plane trace a silver line through the dusk. I remembered the girl in the Cessna, bursting with hope and possibility. I realized she was still there, waiting for me to stop asking for permission to fly. "You've followed their rules for as long as you can remember, Chloe. Maybe too long. Maybe it's time to write your own." His words echoed in my mind, reverberating through every quiet moment, every restless night. For days, I replayed the conversation, unable to shake the conviction building quietly inside me. By the end of the week, the path forward had become unmistakably clear. If the old guard refused to make space for women in leadership, I would carve out that space myself. That's how the blueprint for an all-women flight school took shape. Not out of rebellion for its own sake, but out of necessity, out of the stubborn hope that real change has to start somewhere. First, the idea seemed wild, even laughable. Who was I to reshape a tradition-bound industry? But the more I let the thought take root, the more impossible it felt to ignore. I didn't just want to walk away from the airline. I wanted to disrupt the entire industry, to challenge the unspoken rules that kept women grounded while others soared. The first hurdle was figuring out where to begin. My savings, while hard-earned, barely scratched the surface of what I'd need. Planes, hangar space, insurance, instructors. The costs multiplied with every list I made. It was daunting, but the alternative, remaining complicit in a status quo that shut out so many, was worse. The day after I confided my plan to Mom, she called, always the voice of reason in my life. "Chloe, are you really sure about this?" she asked, concern threading through her words. "Starting a business isn't like flying a plane. You can't just set a course and let autopilot take over." She was right, of course. There's no autopilot for this kind of journey. "I know, Mom," I replied, pacing the living room, my nerves as taut as piano wire. "But I can't keep fighting for a seat at a table that was never built for me. If I don't do this, who will?" She gave a weary sigh, the kind that said she'd heard this determination in me before. You've always been so stubborn, Chloe. Just promise me you'll have a safety net, some kind of backup plan. I promise, I said, even though the truth was there was no plan B. This was all or nothing. Next, I reached out to Laura Delgado, my former flight instructor and one of the rare people in aviation who'd always treated me like I belonged. I told her my idea, half expecting hesitation. Instead, she jumped in with both feet. Chloe, this is brilliant, she said without missing a beat. The industry is crying out for change. Let me help. With Laura by my side, the impossible started to feel a little more achievable. We spent endless hours poring over ideas, hunting for locations, scouring the internet for used planes, and brainstorming recruitment strategies. It wasn't glamorous, more caffeine-fueled nights and cluttered notebooks than boardrooms and business plans, but for the first time in years I felt energized by the work, like I was finally investing in something that mattered. From the outset, I knew this school had to be about more than flight hours and checklists. I wanted to smash the glass ceiling, not just teach women to fly but empower them to lead. I envisioned a space where women could master the technical skills and cultivate the kind of confidence that endures when the industry tries to clip their wings. Training pilots was only the beginning. I wanted to nurture trailblazers equipped to change the narrative. One early morning, Laura and I sat across from each other, mugs of coffee warming our hands, as we struggled over our mission statement. It has to be bigger than just flying, I insisted, jotting notes in the margin of my planner. We need to teach them how to navigate systems stacked against them, to speak up when they're told they don't belong. Laura nodded, her eyes lighting up. Exactly. We should invite women who've broken barriers. Pilots, engineers, air traffic controllers. Let our students see possibility in every story. And scholarships, I added fiercely. We can't just open the door for women who can afford it. We have to make it accessible for those who've never been given a chance. Laura smiled, leaning back in her chair. You're not just building a school, Chloe. You're building a movement. Her words lit something inside me, a sense of purpose that went beyond profit or reputation. This was about rewriting the story for every woman who'd ever been told she was dreaming too big. The months that followed blurred into a whirlwind of planning, phone calls, and meetings. For every spark of progress, there were setbacks, skeptical investors, polite rejections, and more than a few condescending smiles. Every time I pitched the idea, someone questioned the demand. A flight school just for women? A bank manager asked, barely concealing his doubt. Seems like a pretty narrow market. Are you sure you'll find enough students? Each rejection stung, but Laura kept reminding me that every great innovation faces resistance at first. Just as my faith began to waver, Laura brought new hope. Chloe, she said one night, rifling through a stack of papers at my cluttered kitchen table. Have you heard of Wings of Change? They're a non-profit that funds aviation initiatives, especially those promoting diversity. The name alone was a lifeline. Together we crafted a detailed proposal. Mission statement, tuition models, projected operating costs, everything down to the last dollar. When the phone finally rang, I recognized the Wings of Change logo on my caller ID and felt my heart leap. Chloe, I've reviewed your proposal, the director said, her voice steady. And I think this is exactly the kind of initiative we want to support. We're prepared to offer you a startup grant to cover your first year of operations. I nearly dropped the phone in disbelief. You're serious? My voice trembled with relief and excitement. Absolutely. Your vision is crucial for the future of aviation. With their backing, we finally leased our first planes, rented a modest hangar on the outskirts of town, and officially founded the Women's Aviation Academy. The dream was suddenly, miraculously real. Opening day was a swirl of nerves and anticipation. Laura and I had worked tirelessly to spread the word, but until we saw real women walk through the door, everything felt uncertain. That morning, standing in the hangar, I found myself rearranging chairs again and again, anything to keep my hands busy. Then I heard the crunch of tires on gravel outside. Sarah arrived first, a young aircraft mechanic whose hands still bore traces of engine grease, her eyes shining with possibility. She grinned as she introduced herself. "I've always wanted to be a pilot," she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "But every time I mentioned it at work, the guys would laugh and tell me to stick to fixing planes, not flying them." Moments later, Janet entered, a retired nurse in her mid-50s. She paused at the door, her gaze sweeping across the rows of seats and the brightly lit hangar, a mix of awe and apprehension on her face. "I always dreamed of flying," she said softly, as if admitting a secret she'd kept hidden for decades. "I never thought I'd get the chance." Each new arrival brought their own story, their own reasons for being here. Some seeking a lifelong dream, others determined to challenge the limits set before them. As I watched them settle in, I realized the school was already doing what I'd hoped, giving women a place to belong, to grow, and to prove that the sky was theirs to claim. That day, standing at the front of the room, I saw not just students but pioneers. The energy was electric, an unspoken promise that together, we could reshape the future of aviation. One flight, one leader, one story at a time. "Flying's been my dream since I was a kid," she said, her voice trembling with emotion so soft it almost dissolved into the hush of the hangar. "But life happened. Family needed me, work never let up, and all the responsibilities just stacked higher year after year. For so long I figured it was too late. But when I saw your program I felt this flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late after all." By mid-morning, 5 women had gathered, their folding chairs scattered across the cavernous space, each carrying an entire lifetime behind her eyes. But what united them was unmistakable, a quiet, fierce determination that seemed to charge the air between us. I stood before them, suddenly aware of how much this moment meant, how these women were the living embodiment of a dream I'd long held onto. Trying not to let my voice waver, I welcomed them to the academy. "You don't just belong here," I told them, meaning every word. "You're the reason this place exists." In their faces I saw both nerves and hope, and for the first time in months, I finally felt like I was standing exactly where I was meant to be. The weeks slipped by, and our little experiment began to take root. At first, word traveled in whispers. An Instagram story here, a mention at a local aviation club there. I wasn't sure if anyone beyond our hangar walls would even notice. But then, one crisp morning, one of our students posted a video of her first solo flight. In it, her voice cracked with joy as she touched down, her smile as bright as the sunrise behind her. The video caught fire online, and suddenly our inbox overflowed with messages. Women from all walks of life, nurses, teachers, engineers, mothers, wanted in. Our small circle of 5 quickly became a bustling cohort of over 20, each one eager to chase the sky. It didn't take long for the reality of our growth to catch up to us. Laura and I found ourselves pulled in every direction. Teaching, handling endless paperwork, doing maintenance checks, scrambling to keep up with the growing list of students. We were exhilarated, but also stretched to the breaking point. One evening, as we sifted through lesson plans and maintenance logs over takeout coffee, Laura caught my eye and said what we were both thinking. "We need more instructors, Chloe. We can't do this alone anymore." Relief flooded through me. She was right, it was time to grow our team. The next morning, we crafted a job ad that spoke from the heart. We wanted instructors who understood the barriers women faced in aviation. People who cared about building more than just flight hours but a true community. The response stunned me. Jasmine, a former Air Force pilot who'd pressed pause on her career to raise kids, wrote us a passionate letter about her longing to return to the skies in a way that would matter. Priya, a seasoned commercial pilot burned out by years in the corporate grind, saw our academy as a chance to reignite her love for flying and mentor others. Within a few weeks, we'd assembled a team as committed as we were. With their help, we finally managed to match the pace of our growing academy, without sacrificing what made our mission special. A year passed in a blur of lessons, late nights, and small triumphs. The airfield transformed. What had once been a quiet, run-down patch of land now buzzed from sunrise to dusk. Engines roared, laughter echoed, and the sight of women stepping confidently into cockpits became our new normal. There was pride in every takeoff and landing, every certificate earned. And then, just as we were catching our breath, came the email that changed everything. "Hi, Chloe." It began plain and professional, but my heart sped up as I read on. It was from a Horizon Air recruiter. "We've been hearing great things about the Women's Aviation Academy and wanted to know if you have any graduates ready for entry-level positions with us. We're looking for skilled pilots, and your program seems like the perfect place to start." I stared at the screen, hardly believing it. Our students, these women who'd once doubted if they even belonged in the cockpit, were being sought out by airlines. I called Laura on the spot, barely able to get the words out. "Laura, you're not going to believe this. Horizon Air wants to recruit our students." She let out a jubilant cheer that made me laugh and cry at the same time. "Chloe, this is it. This is what we've been working for. The industry is finally seeing us." The momentum only built from there. More messages arrived. Regional carriers, small airlines, even a major international airline expressing interest. Our graduates were interviewing, getting offers, and stepping into professional flying roles. Each new job wasn't just a personal victory for a student. It was a resounding affirmation of our mission. Every success sent a ripple through our community, inspiring the next wave of women to believe that they, too, could make it. Then, one morning as I was catching up on paperwork between classes, the phone rang. It was Mrs. Turner, the principal at a local high school. Her voice was warm but insistent. "Chloe, I've been following your academy's journey, and I think it's remarkable. We're hosting a career day next month, and I'd love you to come speak, especially to our young women. I think they need to see what's possible." I hesitated, feeling the old nerves. Speaking to a hangar full of aspiring pilots was one thing. Facing a gym packed with teenagers was another. But I remembered how much I'd needed to see someone like me at that age. "Of course," I said, hoping my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I'd be honored." Career day arrived, and I stepped into a gymnasium pulsing with adolescent energy. Laughter, chatter, sneakers squeaking on the floor. Mrs. Turner introduced me as a trailblazer, and I felt my heart hammering as I walked to the mic, all the eyes in the room turning my way. I took a breath, searching for the right words. "When I was your age," I began, "I sat in a cockpit for the first time." My heart soared, but I also knew the world didn't always make space for girls to dream that big. "I'm here because I want you to know. No dream is too big and no goal is too far away. If you love something, chase it. Even if the world tells you it's not for you, prove them wrong." I told them about my first lessons, the fear and exhilaration, the setbacks and small victories, the day we opened the academy. I watched the room grow quiet, a sea of faces listening intently. When I opened the floor for questions, a girl in the front row, her hands nervously twisted in her lap, raised her hand. Her voice was barely audible. "Do you think someone like me could be a pilot?" I smiled, remembering all the times I'd asked myself the same thing. "Not only do I think you can, I know you can. And when you're ready, come find me at the academy. We'll get you started." The hope on her face was unmistakable, and for a moment, all the exhaustion, the doubts, the obstacles, it all felt worth it. Back at the academy, I carried that day with me. Weeks later, I stood in the crisp morning air, watching Lisa, one of our newest students, preparing for her first solo flight. She was a single mom who'd spent years juggling late shifts and childcare, putting everyone else's dreams before her own. Now, as she tightened her harness and checked her instruments, I saw the same mix of fear and excitement I'd seen in every woman who'd walked through our doors. Her son watched from the sidelines, eyes shining with pride. As Lisa taxied down the runway, I thought of all the invisible threads connecting us. Each woman overcoming her own barriers, each victory lighting the way for the next. The academy was no longer just a place to learn to fly. It was living proof that when women support each other, the sky is no limit at all. She once confided in me during a lull between flight lessons. Her voice soft but earnest, that soaring through the clouds had always been the dream tucked away in her heart. "I used to imagine it as a kid," she admitted, her eyes flickering with memory. "But I never really believed it was something I could reach for. Life just gets in the way." She offered me this wistful little smile, the kind that says more than words ever could, a mixture of longing and resignation. Yet now, watching her buckle herself into the pilot's seat, every trace of hesitation seemed to melt away. The determination etched on her face was unmistakable, a quiet revolution happening right before my eyes. I couldn't help but pause, my own breath catching as she taxied down the runway. There was a hush, a collective anticipation among the handful of students gathered near the hangar. The aircraft's nose lifted, and in that instant, when her plane broke free from the earth and climbed skyward, it felt like time itself held its breath. A spontaneous cheer rippled through the little group, the sound brimming with pride and disbelief. Standing beside me was her son, no more than 10 or 11. His expression a perfect portrait of awe. His gaze followed the plane as though afraid to blink and miss a moment. "That's my mom," he whispered softly, the words almost too precious to share. They hung in the air, a private mantra, brimming with pride and a dawning realization that his mother was capable of extraordinary things. When Lisa landed, sunlight glinting off the cockpit glass, she emerged transformed, radiant, almost luminous with joy and disbelief. Her son sprinted over, flinging his arms around her waist, his laugh bubbling up unrestrained. "You're amazing, Mom," he declared, looking up at her as if she'd single-handedly rewritten what was possible in their world. Lisa met my eyes then, and I saw tears shimmering, not of sadness but of something deeper. Fulfillment, gratitude, maybe a touch of wonder. "Thank you, Chloe. You've changed my life," she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Driving home that evening, her words echoed in my head, replaying over and over. For so long, I'd measured success by external markers. Titles, promotions, salary bumps, the kind of recognition you could put on a resume. But witnessing Lisa's triumph, both the literal and the metaphorical flight, shifted something inside me. It was so clear now. Real success wasn't about accolades or climbing ladders. It was about unlocking potential in others, watching them break barriers they'd built around themselves. It was about being the spark that set someone else's journey alight. I realized then this wasn't just a job. This was a calling, a purpose bigger than myself. A couple of years swept by in a whirlwind of early mornings and late nights, and the Women's Aviation Academy blossomed into something I'd only dared to envision in my most hopeful moments. The old airfield, once echoing with emptiness, now thrummed with life and laughter. We expanded far beyond our modest beginnings. 3 bustling hangars, 6 training aircraft, and a steady current of students of every age, background and ambition. Some walked in fresh-faced, straight out of high school, hungry for a path no one expected them to take. Others, like Lisa, arrived with lives already half-lived, proving that it's never too late to reach for the impossible. Laura and I poured ourselves into new initiatives. We launched scholarships specifically for women who'd never dreamed they could afford to fly, reaching out to underrepresented communities who'd never seen someone like them in the cockpit. We built partnerships with local community colleges, creating pathways for our students to earn degrees alongside their pilot licenses. Our mentorship program flourished, connecting aspiring aviators with seasoned women pilots who offered not just advice, but living proof that the sky was truly open to them. Word spread faster than we'd imagined, and soon airlines were calling us, eager to recruit our graduates. Our placement numbers soared, each job offer a testament to how far we'd come. One bright afternoon, as I sat buried beneath a mountain of new student applications, Laura walked in, her eyes sparkling with excitement, waving an envelope above her head. "You're going to want to see this," she teased, barely able to contain her grin. The return address set my heart racing. The National Aviation Association. Inside, an official invitation, a request for me to deliver the keynote speech at their annual industry gala. For a few moments, I just stared at the letter, my mind struggling to process what it meant. "They want me to talk?" I asked, equal parts disbelief and laughter bubbling up. Laura laughed, her pride unmistakable. "They don't just want you to talk," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "They want you to show them what's possible. Chloe, you've changed the game. And now, finally, the whole industry is noticing." The night of the gala arrived, and I found myself standing in a grand hotel ballroom, the space glittering with chandeliers and crowded with the sharpest minds and biggest names in aviation. The air hummed with ambition and expectation. I arrived early, wanting to soak it all in, the swirl of evening gowns and tailored suits, the mingling of old friends and rivals. It was surreal, almost dreamlike, to walk among the very executives and gatekeepers who, years before, had barely acknowledged my existence. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wasn't just another pilot or a hopeful entrepreneur. I was there as a keynote speaker, as someone whose work had begun to shift the very landscape of aviation. Laura found me just before the program began. Her presence grounding and reassuring. "You ready for this?" she asked, her voice a quiet anchor. "Ready as I'll ever be," I replied, feeling my heart hammering in my chest. Scanning the crowd, I caught sight of familiar faces from my airline days. Dave loitered near the back, arms folded, his expression inscrutable. Megan Carrington, the consummate company loyalist, chatted animatedly with a knot of executives. The evening unfurled as a parade of speeches and awards, polite applause filling the room after each name was called. Our table near the front was a little island. Laura, a few of our first graduates, and me. We exchanged quiet smiles, each of us aware that just being in this room was its own kind of victory. Then, a hush fell as the presenter took the stage to announce a special recognition. "This next award," she began, her voice ringing out, "is for a woman who hasn't just excelled in aviation, but has dedicated herself to reshaping its future. She's built a path where none existed before, empowering women of every age and background to take to the skies. Please join me in honoring Chloe Rivers, founder of the Women's Aviation Academy, with the National Aviation Excellence Award." For a heartbeat, I sat frozen, the words barely registering. It felt impossible that the story she described was mine. Laura nudged me, her face radiant with pride. "Chloe, that's you. Go, this is your moment." As I stood and made my way to the stage, applause erupted, filling the vast room. Yet, as I looked out over the crowd, my attention snagged on Dave standing at the back, arms crossed, face unreadable, the same man who'd once told me, without a trace of irony, that passengers would never feel comfortable with a woman in charge. Now he was forced to see me, to see all of us, standing exactly where he'd never imagined we belonged. I took the award, my hands trembling, and approached the microphone. For a moment, I searched for words, feeling the weight and the wonder of the journey behind me. "Thank you," I began, my voice steady, even as emotion swelled beneath the surface. "I started the Women's Aviation Academy because I was tired of hearing the word no. I wanted to create a place where no wasn't the end of the conversation, but the beginning of a new challenge. Together, we've proven that the sky isn't a limit. It's a beginning. And tonight, as I look out across this room, I don't just see industry leaders. I see the future, wide open for every woman who dares to dream." The applause swelled again, but it was the faces in the crowd, the graduates, the new students, the women who'd found their wings, that mattered most. In that moment, I understood. My greatest achievement wasn't the award in my hand. It was the legacy of courage, hope, and possibility we'd built together, and the promise that there was so much more ahead. "You're not what we're looking for. No, you don't fit the mold." Those words followed me like a shadow, each rejection stacking up until it felt like they might bury me. I can't count how many times I had to swallow my disappointment, plaster on a smile, and try again. But tonight, with the weight of the award solid and cool in my hands, something shifted. This wasn't just about me making it. It was about every woman who'd ever been told she wasn't enough, every woman who'd been nudged aside, yet still found the strength to push forward. The applause thundered through the ballroom, echoing off marble and crystal. Faces blurred in the glow of the spotlight, but my gaze landed on Dave. For years, his smirk had been a constant, sometimes dismissive, sometimes just amused, but tonight it was gone. In its place was something more complicated. Maybe regret, maybe surprise, maybe even respect. For the first time, I realized the win wasn't just personal. It was a seismic shift, proof that all the stubbornness, the late nights, the lonely flights and louder voices had been worth it. As the crowd thinned and laughter softened into tired farewells, I slipped between clusters of guests, the award pressed tight against my chest. My heart pounded as memories flickered. Late-night study sessions, awkward interviews, the sting of being underestimated. All those years I'd craved acknowledgement, hungered for someone to actually see me. Now, as Laura went to fetch the car, I found myself alone in the hallway, the buzz of the evening still humming in my veins. That's when I caught sight of Dave, lingering by the exit, his drink swirling in the glass. For a brief second, I considered ducking away, but his eyes found mine. No escape. "Chloe," he called, voice just a shade too bright. Quite the speech. "Congratulations." I met his gaze evenly. "Thanks, Dave." Kept my tone measured, steady. "Funny, isn't it? Not so long ago you told me a woman couldn't lead. And yet, here I am." His smile faltered, the mask slipping. He glanced sideways, searching for a comfortable place to look. "It wasn't personal. It's just the way things worked back then. The way we all thought." I shook my head, feeling years of frustration condense into a simple truth. "No, Dave. That was how you worked, how you chose to see things. But things are changing whether you like it or not. The industry's evolving. You can either keep holding it back or help move it forward. I know which side I'm on. What about you?" He hesitated, words caught in his throat. For once, he had nothing to say. I didn't wait for an answer. I walked past him, out into the chill of the evening, my chest lighter than it had been in years. The fight wasn't over. I knew there were still battles ahead, still ceilings to crack and doors to open for those coming up behind me. But tonight I had proof that effort mattered, that persistence could shift the ground beneath us. On the drive home, the award glinted in the dashboard lights, a tangible symbol of years' worth of invisible labor. I replayed the night over and over. The applause, the recognition, Dave's flickering expression. It all felt surreal, like I was living someone else's story. But deep down, I knew this was the culmination of every risk I'd taken, of founding the Women's Aviation Academy in spite of skeptics. It wasn't just a good decision, it was the best one I'd ever made. I thought about the women who'd come through our doors, the students who'd sent messages tonight overflowing with hope and pride. I saw myself in them, the nervousness, the ambition, the relentless drive to fly higher. At home, I set the award on the mantel beside Dad's photo. He'd only been gone 6 months, but his voice was still fresh in my mind. "Don't let anyone tell you your dreams are too big." For so many years, I'd sought validation from people who didn't believe in me. I'd measured my worth by their standards, let their doubts seep into my own. But tonight I realized I didn't need their approval. I had my own, and the silent, steadfast support of a father who'd always told me to look up. Sinking into the couch, I scrolled through messages. Students sharing their victories, colleagues offering congratulations, even complete strangers sharing their own stories of perseverance. For the first time in years, I felt peace settle over me, soft and steady. The world wanted me to keep fighting, and I would. There were still barriers to dismantle, still so many women waiting for their chance to soar. But tonight was a victory, not just for me, but for every woman bold enough to chase dreams the world tried to shrink. Before heading to bed, I paused by the mantel. The award caught the moonlight, casting a golden glow over Dad's smile. I realized then that the sky was never a ceiling. It was a canvas, vast, open, waiting for new stories to be painted across it. And now we were up there, rewriting what was possible, one flight at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. Your support helps these voices be heard, and ensures you won't miss the next chapter. Thank you for being here. The journey's just beginning. See you soon.